I recognized the end the moment Kyle called me ma'am, like it was an insult coated in sugar. Not courteous, condescending. The same tone you'd use for a pest dressed in business casual. 25 years of circuits, schematics, and sleepless nights, erased with a silent badge deactivation before I even reached the elevator. That's how Apex Manufacturing closed the chapter on me. No farewell speech, no cupcakes, just an automated lockout and the citrus tang of disinfectant on plastic. Furniture. I scanned my workspace one last time. It had once been organized chaos, technical drawings half buried beneath ceramic mugs, sticky notes covered in formulas only I could decipher, and a stale bag of caramel candies I kept for emergencies or interns. Now, it looked abandoned. All that remained was a framed schematic I'd drafted by hand during our garage startup days, before venture vultures, boardroom buzzwords, and Kyle's Silicon Valley cosplay. I cradled it gently, slipping it into my tote like an artifact from a forgotten civilization. If you're still watching, you're clearly invested. Humor me for a second. Only 3% of viewers are subscribed. That means 97% of you are here for the drama but not supporting the revolution. I'm trying to hit 10,000 loyal followers. It's free, and unlike Kyle's leadership, it actually does something useful. Now, back to the implosion. Kyle strutted past my cubicle mid-rant on his Bluetooth, clutching a protein shake and throwing out jargon like synergize the verticals and legacy disruption. I'm not sure what reeked more, his vanilla supplement or his self-importance. He didn't even acknowledge me. Just waltzed by like I was part of the obsolete decor. I might as well have been a dusty fax machine left over from a merger of Margaret at reception gave me that tight smile women reserve for funerals and HR interviews. I moved slowly through the building like I was touring a condemned museum. The shipping area, the old snack station with the broken vending machine that only stole your quarters, never your optimism. The linoleum by the assembly floor where we used to prank each other with fake spill notices. Every square foot held a memory, and each one stung like rubbing alcohol in a fresh cut. Want to know what really hit me? The interns. They didn't even know my name. One of them thought I was from payroll. I'm the architect of half the automation. Protocols that keep this place from turning into a mechanical spaghetti bowl. I built the neural logic that governs the servo arms. And in Kyle's brave new empire, I was just another signature on a layoff spreadsheet formatted by someone who thinks floppy disks are a myth. Outside, drizzle fell with that Midwest pettiness, more annoyance than rain. I sat in my car, Blueprint, buckled into the passenger seat like a co-pilot in exile. I wasn't emotional. I wasn't shattered. What I felt was metallic, cool, concentrated resolve. Because Kyle didn't just dismiss me, he discarded the only engineer who truly understood the architecture behind Apex's newest innovation, the multi-million-dollar upgrade. The sleek proprietary operating core Kyle had showcased at the town hall was mine. Vidian Dynamics. My code. My fingerprints. The system he paraded around like a magician revealing a trick he didn't invent. 3 days after my exit, Kyle held his over-the-top rollout meeting. Spotlights rented, audience forced. He paced the floor in overpriced sneakers and a clip-on mic, selling the illusion. He looked like he'd practiced TED Talks in front of his mirror while reading the Lean Startup out loud. Behind him, the projector displayed bold Helvetica, Vidian Dynamics, reinventing Apex. I nearly spit out my coffee. Not because of the branding, I picked that name years ago, but because of the performance. The man was flaunting a system he couldn't even navigate. We're revolutionizing operations, Kyle declared, arms spread like a tech messiah. No more duct tape fixes. We're automating everything, streamlining with intelligent software. Designed to learn and evolve. It was a pretty speech. Polished. Aspirational. Completely divorced from the mechanical realities I'd spent decades mastering. Kyle didn't understand the framework, the dependencies, or the cascading protocols required to keep our robotics from collapsing under pressure, but he knew how to sell a fantasy. And that fantasy was built on my legacy. He tapped the remote. The slide transitioned to a chaotic visual mess, flowcharts choked with buzzword-laced boxes and arrows zigzagging like someone spilled coffee on a UI mockup and just kept going. At the crown of the disaster sat the Vidian symbol, my emblem, now soaked in gradient overload and smeared with branding nonsense. Then came the jab. Some teams have shown hesitation, Kyle said, tone syrupy, smile brittle. They're married to tradition. Familiar patterns. Safe habits. He didn't glance my way. Didn't need to. The room did it for him, dozens of heads pivoting toward me like sunflowers. Catching contempt. Right on cue, my old units, before snapshot hit the screen. Sketches taped to corkboards, a decades-old oscilloscope, even the dry erase wall with my infamous, do not erase, flow logic, now public humiliation fodder. This, Kyle announced with theatrical amusement, is what we're replacing. Uneasy chuckles bounced around the conference space, polite, strained, tinged with guilt. The kind of laughter people use when they're praying not to be next. I said nothing. Just smiled, barely. A twitch of the lip. A glint behind the stillness. One that Linda, 3 rows back, immediately recognized. She froze mid-scribble. She'd seen it once before, the day I quietly solved the sensor desync issue and let the department head stew for 3 weeks before revealing it. That wasn't a grin. That was a warning. Kyle continued his buzzword tirade. Agile transformation. Digital synergies. Workflow reinvention. A tsunami of corporate syllables that meant absolutely nothing to the people who actually did the work. He cued a video, footage of factory automation ripped from a stock site, employees in hard hats waving at drones, smooth jazz drowning the absence of substance. The tagline blinked across the screen, Vidian Dynamics, because tomorrow doesn't. Wait. I nearly gagged. Tomorrow had waited. Waited through late-night prototypes in my basement. Waited while I filed bugs nobody cared to fix. Waited while I battled for funding scraps while Kyle was still coding apps that matched roommates based on favorite emoji, and the heart of it all locked away. The codebase buried so deep in proprietary encryption they'd need a master key and a divine miracle to find it. I made sure of that. I glanced down. My notebook still rested on my lap, undisturbed despite the exile. At the top, one line stood bold in blue ink: let them build the noose using your blueprints. Applause trickled in. Not celebration, just relief. An excuse to stand. To escape. People trickled out murmuring about restructuring, whispers of redundancy, talk of efficiencies. I let the crowd pass. Didn't rush. I wasn't done watching the collapse unfold. The exit. Linda caught up. She approached gently, like approaching a sleeping bear with a cattle prod. You all right? She asked. Perfect, I replied, the curve of my mouth still intact. They finally activated Vidian. Her brow furrowed. Wait, you're Vidian? I nodded once. Oh my God. Her whisper cracked with horror. Does he have any idea? No, I said, pushing open the glass door. But that's about to change. It always happens on Fridays, that flavorless, heavy Ohio kind of Friday where the sun can't be bothered and even the birds sound fed up. I sensed it before it happened, the kind of instinct you earn after surviving 4 CEOs, 2 buyouts, and an asbestos scare. The intern, Kyle's new assistant, arrived before lunch. Fresh-faced, uncomfortable in cheap office wear and clinging to a clipboard like it had answers. Mr. Kyle would like to speak with you, in Mr. Ronson's old office. There it was. The clue. Not HR. Not the generic glass-walled room with a fake fern and a box of tissues. Ronson's office, personal. Deliberate. The kind of setting you choose when you want to look someone in the eye while you stick the knife in. I finished my yogurt. Tossed the cup. Straightened my collar. Then walked with the slow certainty of someone who's already memorized the exits. The door was ajar inside. Kyle sat behind a spotless desk that looked like it came pre-assembled with ego. Chrome fixtures, artificial succulent, a brushed steel lamp probably featured on some productivity blog. He hadn't even looked up yet, busy. Sounds expensive, I replied, tone flat as steel. He grinned like I'd endorsed his hair gel. The reality is, you've been instrumental to Apex's success. Truly. But the direction we're headed requires a different approach. Your methodology? It's a bit too, well, legacy. That word, legacy. He delivered it like it belonged on a TEDx stage. As if firing the architect of the very system he was championing was somehow noble. I imagined the thunderous applause from fellow mediocrities. At whatever startup panel he planned to humble brag this on. I said nothing. No eye roll. No say. Just a long, silent stare. The kind that makes people question their choices. Then I shifted my gaze past him, to the bare wall where Ronson's gallery of employee photos once lived. Celebrations. Anniversaries. Lifetimes. Gone. Erased. Kyle had cleared that wall like it was a reboot, but some systems remember everything, even the deleted files. Should I request a box, or just repurpose the same canvas tote I brought in back in '98? I asked evenly. Kyle looked confused, blinking like I'd just asked him to solve a riddle in Swahili. I'm sure facilities can find you something. No need, I cut in, standing up smoothly. I pack light. I walked out without offering a handshake. That unsettled him far more than if I'd shouted. Silence has weight. Mine landed like a wrench in the gears. At my station, the final collection took barely 5 minutes. A couple of notebooks, my beat-up thermos that red engineers do it with precision, the lettering now a ghost of its former self, and one framed drawing, Vidian version 1.1, hand-signed and dated 6 years prior. I stared at it a long time. The graphite lines still sharp. Corners smudged with calculation dust. Mug rings faint but visible. I ran a thumb along the glass and let a grin slip. not for sentiment. This was the grin of someone who just watched a rival castle a rook into a trap. Linda hovered near the edge of the cubicle like a concerned nurse debating a hug, her eyes already glossy with sympathy. I heard, she whispered. I gave a curt nod. Tell Kyle to review the clauses next time. Clauses? Her brows lifted. 10-8-12-944b2, I replied, slipping the schematic into my bag like it was an ancient relic. Her mouth fell open. She didn't recognize the number, but the way I said it? Like a warhead in waiting, without another word, I left Apex's fluorescent purgatory behind. I didn't turn around. Somewhere behind the glass, Kyle probably watched me go, convinced he'd orchestrated some brilliant transition plan. That smug illusion of closure. A nice clean purge. Out with the legacy. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that the future he just paraded in front of investors belonged entirely to me. Not legally. Not morally. Literally. My garage didn't smell like motor oil or stale takeout like you'd expect. It smelled like order, solder fumes, cool aluminum, and a hint of lavender from the sachet my mother tucked into my toolbox 2 decades ago. I never threw it out. Every surface was spotless. Pegboards labeled with military precision. Cables coiled tighter than Kyle's khakis. Shelves organized by invention year. Most people do yoga. I sort resistors by resistance. That Saturday, while Kyle was probably microdosing ego from some tech magazine's success story section, I sat in the far corner at a brushed steel workbench and opened the drawer marked VID&no creek. No heat. Just silent intent. Inside? 7 perfectly indexed binders. Blueprints. Firmware logs. Real-time integration tests. Everything that made up Vidian Dynamics, not a company, not a product line. A system. One I'd built in pieces while Apex was duct-taping legacy platforms together like amateur surgery. Vidian was born when I realized our robotics backbone was running on hope, baling wire, and half-remembered C++. The solution? A lean, modular suite capable of reprogramming itself around outdated infrastructure. Smart, adaptable, lethal. All constructed in this garage using borrowed parts, a salvaged 3D printer, and the occasional feedback from my cat. When I first dreamed it up, Apex was broke. Ronson still ran the show, gruff, practical, decent. I pitched it to him gently. Wrapped in a licensing offer so generous it made my lawyer twitch. Full integration, lifetime updates, $1 buy-in. I even promised personal oversight to ensure safe rollout. He smiled, weary but warm. I'm too close to retirement to burn the ship down and rebuild it mid-ocean. Fair enough. So I did what any seasoned female engineer in a predatory industry does. I filed the patents solo. 7 of them. All under my name. Protected by a boutique firm that specialized in keeping corporate scavengers at bay. They didn't just file, they reinforced. Ironclad, titanium-sealed, litigation-proof filings that would make even the most aggressive CEO pause. Patent 10,812,944b2. Public record. Easily searchable. Watertight. I knew it was only a matter of time before someone like Kyle got curious. What I didn't expect was how boldly he'd walk into the snare. Saturday afternoon, I sifted through every receipt, schematic, timestamp, and email thread related to Vidian's evolution. I copied them to 3 drives, 1 encrypted locally, 1 cloud stored in a digital vault, and the third? That one I mailed to myself. Signed. Sealed. Unopened. Just in case lawyers needed an official timestamp chain of custody. By Sunday lunchtime, I had what I now called the Kyle Kit, a beautiful, devastating collection of evidence. A perfectly calibrated hammer. Side-by-side comparisons of my architecture and the knockoff version Apex had implemented. Code strings identical. Instruction trees mirrored. The kind of overlap that made juries stop chewing their pens and start writing damages. It wasn't just plagiarism. It was wholesale identity theft. Corporate cosplay in stolen skin, and funny enough, I wasn't mad, not anymore. The sting had burned off sometime around Friday night. What was left wasn't grief, it was cold strategy. The clarity that comes after watching your enemy walk onto the X you painted on the floor weeks earlier. He thought he was clever. He thought he buried me, but what Kyle didn't understand was this: I am Vidian. And now, I'm the one holding the detonator. What I felt wasn't rage. It was colder. Sharper. The calm before a superstorm. Kyle had stolen my life's work, gutted my career, and insulted my legacy. Now it was my turn to dismantle the empire he thought he built. By Wednesday, Apex's factory floor had transformed. Gone were the rhythmic pulses of production. In their place, silence. The kind of eerie hush that settles over disaster zones. Robotic arms stood paralyzed. Conveyor belts sat in eerie stillness like museum exhibits. An alarm tone, shrill and unrelenting, echoed through the space like a broken fire drill. It had been wailing since 6 a.m. No one could stop it. So they didn't. They just tuned it out, like every bad executive decision that came before. The rollout of Vidian Dynamics had begun on Monday. Kyle was practically vibrating with self-importance, dressed in a knockoff Steve Jobs outfit, tight black sweater, overpriced jeans, and that hollow tech bro grin. He rallied employees around the central interface, unveiling a laminated chart like it was scripture. By Q2's end, he declared, we'll boost throughput 30%, slash labor needs in half, and automate 90% of this operation. 2 hours later, line 1 collapsed. Sensors misread bracket sizes, classifying perfectly standard pieces as anomalies. The packaging robot dumped an entire crate of assemblies onto the cement. One technician whispered about ghosts and got reprimanded for creating an emotionally unsafe workspace. By sundown, Apex was down $12,000, materials destroyed, staff clocking double time, and one critical shipment left. Tuesday brought chaos in triplicate. The pick-and-place arms developed a twitch, jittering mid-sweep like they were having seizures. Operators watched in dismay as thousands of coordination hours unraveled live. Kyle's precious new dashboard began vomiting cryptic red alerts, none of which appeared in the official guidebook. It's like someone tried to write instructions in Klingon using IKEA furniture logic, muttered a line supervisor. That afternoon, the unraveling began. In earnest. Kyle turned on his own engineers. What's this? Why is the script in some alien dialect? He barked, pointing at terminal code. The integrator fumbled. It's not alien. That's specialized syntax. We didn't write it. We were told to use the supplied configuration exactly. Kyle's face drained. You mean the $2.4 million platform I approved? This is it? Yes. And it's brilliant, flexible, self-correcting, extremely lean, but we can't trace errors. There's no documentation. It's like it was made by a lone genius who didn't want help. He turned beet red. A vein on his forehead danced like it was auditioning for its own show. External consultants arrived before sunset. Matching polos, identical laptops, zero solutions. They poked at the system like medical interns fumbling their first cadaver. The day ended with selfies in the parking lot and muttered phrases like catastrophic elegance and cyberpunk sabotage. On the floor, whispers swirled. Susan, the veteran. The one they shoved out. The architect behind the comm, the order. The functionality. Back when machines worked and people weren't afraid of blinking. One operator compared the current setup to piloting a jet while the dashboard kept switching between Russian and Swahili. Every button moved, every label changed, and the eject option vanished. Kyle refused to listen. He paced the hallways like a deranged TED Talk reject, shouting into Bluetooth about agile pivoting and cross-functional synergies. He brought in contractors. Then freelancers. Then gag orders. Midweek, he ordered a system-wide reset. That stunt wiped out Apex's entire tracking grid. Inventory files vanished. Barcodes glitched. For 3 hours, the company had no idea what it owned, where it was, or if it was even functional. Thursday arrived like a reckoning. Workers were exhausted. Executives looked haunted. The nickname spread, the virus. That's what they called Vidian now. I watched it all unfold from the quiet comfort of my workshop, sipping peppermint tea, refreshing the Apex backend through an old admin profile I created years ago for simulations. Still active, still full access. Kyle never even changed the root credentials. His MBA had clearly skipped Cybersecurity 101. Every time a process failed, I saw the why. I didn't cause it. No sabotage needed. The system was just doing its job, guarding itself from unauthorized access. Every protection protocol I built into it, every conditional safeguard, every dead man switch, it activated exactly as I intended. The moment unverified hands touched specific branches, Vidian responded like a locked vault, because complexity, when designed properly, doesn't scream. It strangles slowly. By Monday, Apex was limping, barely operational. Line 3's calibration routine initiated a misfire sequence during an otherwise routine weld cycle. Instead of bonding chassis frames, the bots sliced through them like electric scythes. 3 anchor points reversed. Heat patterns off by milliseconds. The result? 42 units, each valued at nearly $6,000, reduced to warped, useless steel sparks. Erupted. A forklift attempting cleanup nearly toppled. Management tried to pin it on human error. Until the error logs came in, the robots hadn't malfunctioned. They'd followed precise instructions no one could trace. No user history. No log metadata, just action, intent, design, and a ghost in the machine they could no longer ignore. The system executed every directive flawlessly, each action timestamped and checksum verified. But the moment investigators attempted to unravel the code pathways, the trail circled back, again and again. It was like chasing shadows in a hall of mirrors. One of the consultants, visibly shaken, whispered, "This software's gaslighting us." Thursday brought more carnage. Inventory scanners began misidentifying nearly every component. Steel beams came up as pressure-treated lumber. Heat-resistant polymers showed up labeled as live electrical cables. One entire shipment, compliant, certified, and tracked, was flagged as contaminated materials and automatically rerouted to a hazardous waste processing unit. Apex had to pay the disposal vendor twice, once for accepting it, and again for returning it in pieces. By Friday, nobody tried to make sense of anything anymore. Explanations had become irrelevant. 3 managers walked off mid-shift. No notice, no email. Just dropped their badges and left. Apparently, one of them snapped after Kyle. Hurled a marker at the whiteboard and shouted, "I'm not getting outmaneuvered by a fossil with a compiler." The atmosphere at headquarters was thick, scratchy and stifling, like fiberglass insulation in your lungs. Conversation dried up. Eye contact vanished. Even the restrooms radiated unease, a pungent blend of stress sweat and expired cologne. Kyle's temper flared with every malfunction. His Bluetooth headset swung from his collar like a broken pendulum, flapping uselessly with every tirade. Each new malfunction became someone else's fault. The integration team caught the first wave of blame. Next came the UX leads. Then came whispers, "Somebody dared to suggest bringing me back." His reply? Acid, "We're not begging that relic to clean up her own disaster. She's why this tech exists in the first place." He had it backward, of course. I hadn't created a mess, I'd installed a firewall. A last line of defense. Kyle had clipped it apart like a toddler with scissors. And expected everything to run smoothly afterward. Meanwhile, I was elbows deep in clay at a community pottery class, my first in 3 decades. The instructor, Barbara, wore rhinestone-covered Crocs and believed that cosmic alignment mattered more than tensile strength. She guided students to "let the earth mold you." I gave the earth foundation layers and symmetrical stress distribution. Barbara called my bull emotionally repressed. I called it weight-bearing. Updates rolled in twice a day, courtesy of Linda. Her texts arrived like tiny detonations. "Linda, line 2 just cross-loaded incompatible units. Lost $30,000 in priority stock." "Linda." Kyle shattered the presentation clicker. "Interns are crying." Consultants walked out, called the codebase emotionally manipulative. My reply: "Me, it's not manipulative. Just homesick." Linda only knew part of the truth. She understood I'd built Vidian, but she didn't know about the buried protection layers, safeguards that had long since activated. They weren't traps. They were guardians. If the system detected unauthorized tampering, it rerouted functions, deployed dummy patches, confused protocols, and twisted logs into digital origami. It wasn't angry. It was defensive. Kyle was lost inside a software fortress he never bothered to read the blueprints for. Meanwhile, he kept thinking he was in control, like a toddler holding the TV remote thinking it moves the actors. Then they sent Martin. If Apex still had anything resembling integrity, it lived in Martin Koig. Former Navy supply chain officer. Current VP of operations. A man who tracked inventory. Martin wasn't a buzzword enthusiast. He wore pressed shirts, remembered people's birthdays, and once drove a delivery van through a snowstorm just to meet a customer promise. He didn't confuse confidence with leadership. He also didn't pretend everything was fine. It was Friday again, exactly 1 week since Kyle showed me the door. The sun dipped behind my backyard maples as the phone rang. Not my mobile. The landline. The one only used by dentists, old friends, and the neighbor who never returned my socket wrench. I answered, expecting spam. "Miss Susan?" A voice faltered. "It's Martin. From Apex." There was a beat of silence. Respectful. Like approaching a downed wire, unsure if it still buzzed. "I know this is unorthodox," he began. "But Apex needs help." I leaned against the counter, staring at a squirrel doing acrobatics on my bird feeder. Determined. Clumsy. Undeterred. "The integration isn't working," he continued. "It's chaos." I offered. He sighed. That kind of defeated breath where pride collapses before words follow. It's a complete breakdown. Systems lock us out of our own architecture. It's like working inside a Rubik's Cube that shuffles while you solve it. Beautiful metaphor, I said dryly. Sounds like sabotage. I don't believe that, he replied quickly. I think it's simply beyond us. He wasn't wrong. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I'd just protected it, layer by elegant layer. So, I asked, what are you hoping for? A consulting engagement. Temporary. Just until we can stabilize the platform. You know, the legacy infrastructure. And we suspect, well, Vidian feels like your design. I smiled. Small. Invisible. Sharp enough to draw blood. Kyle doesn't know. I'm calling, Martin added. He'd never authorized this. But I can't sit back and let this place collapse because some kid in a turtleneck thinks engineers are interchangeable. That almost made me care. Almost, Martin, I said, walking to the kitchen window as the squirrel gave up and scampered down the tree. You're one of the only people from that place who ever got it. So I'll be blunt, my consulting rates? I paused, letting the quiet do the heavy lifting. Let's just say your board would have to liquidate restricted shares just to afford a read receipt. And I charge extra for periods and Oxford commas. Martin didn't speak. But I could hear it, the subtle exhale of someone realizing the safety harness they trusted is actually a looped noose. I'm also rather enjoying this whole retirement arc, I added. Pottery. Plants. Morning walks that don't end in performance reviews. And the thrilling luxury of waking up whenever the sun feels like cooperating. More silence. Then finally, a whisper of professional surrender. Understood, Martin said. Click.no begging. No follow-up. Just a dial tone so sharp it could have been engraved. That was it, not a slammed door. Not revenge porn for the soul. Just the clean, silent kill shot only the wronged can deliver with grace. But endings? Endings have a sense of humor. The real death knell came disguised as routine. A diagnostic test on line 1, the dinosaur of the production floor. A night shift manager named Alex just wanted to clear a simple alert. Something about 8mm bolts not logging correctly. Standard fix. Punch in a few lines, run a report, reboot. But this time, the system paused, then blinked. Unauthorized integrity check detected. One more flicker, failsafe mode initiated, and the floor, just like that, died. Terminals. Kiosks. Every station. Screens glitched, rebooted, and turned an ominous shade of blue. Vidian Dynamics lockdown complete. Error 105A, license unverified. System authority, NULL. In under 2 minutes, the heartbeat of Apex Manufacturing stopped cold. Not just paused, corrupted. The entire quarter's schedule, poof. Inventory entries? Rewritten with recursive nulls. Product IDs? Gone. Barcode data? Toasted. Machines that were humming minutes ago now blinked at employees like embarrassed pets. Then came the avalanche. Subject, missing order confirmation, Peterson Industrial. Subject, contract violation notice, Wilton and Brothers LLPB. The time Kyle staggered out of his brainstorm bunker, still gripping a ping-pong paddle, his inbox had detonated. Dozens of flagged messages. Half had one terrifying keyword in the subject line, termination, and not the kind with cake and goodbye balloons. Panicked, Kyle sprinted to the main terminal. He tried a manual override. The screen requested biometric clearance. He slapped his palm down. Nothing. He tried again. Harder. Like the machine would respond to desperation. Still nothing. His headset gave up, short-circuited mid-call. Sparks flew. He screamed into dead air like a tech bro auditioning for Shakespeare. Then he launched his tablet. It cracked. He yelled